We're back today with Book of Experts and the Experts Need to Know show. The topic is online courses. How do you take your online course? Maybe you're creating a new one or you've already got one. How do you take it to that next level? We've got experts coming in to share 3 different perspectives on what you should be thinking about, what you might not have even thought about yet with your online courses. We'll do that. And of course, make sure you join us for the speed networking right afterwards. We'll be starting that at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me.
So I'm going to bring in my first guest. We have Jake Ulkus, who is joining us from the 2020 course creation method that he's developed with his wife, Ashley. Jake, welcome back to Book of Experts TV.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
Next, we have Billy Broas, who is joining us. And by the way, we are covering the country today. So Billy's out in California. I'm in Miami. Jake, you're in St. Louis. And Billy he's with Linchpin Media. And you can also see billybross.com. Really excited. Billy's got a marketing perspective on thinking about your courses and also maybe working with some bigger companies around this. So really interesting perspective there. And our third guest is actually Jason Van Orden, joining us from Van Orden Media. And Jason, I love introducing you this way. I don't know if it annoys you or not, but Jason and I are about the same age, but I love to call him the old guard because Jason, years and years ago, was the first email list I ever signed up, or at least the first one I remember. Like he was doing email and understanding this whole online internet space before I even understood what was going on here. So I'm going to call you my old guard friend today.
All right, I'll take it.
So first, for our audience out there, I want to apologize. We're doing something unusual today that we don't normally do with our Experts Need to Know show, but it's a bro show. You see, only guys. That's the way the deck shuffled today. I try to normally get a diversity of perspectives. We're going to call it geographic diversity, and Jason's up in New York, so we've got all 4 corners of the country going today. So, welcome, guys. So let's jump right into it immediately. The first thing I'd love to hear from you guys is sort of a state of the union for online courses, because boy, this has been a doozy of a year. Things have changed pretty dramatically. You guys already have been working on the cutting edge of this space, each of you in your own regards, but what are you seeing and what's going on out there in the online course creation, online courses space? And Jake, I'll lead off with you. I brought you on first, so we'll go to you first. What's the world look like?
Well, I mean, it's crazy out there, Tobin. No, I think what I'm seeing lately and what we've been dealing with a lot lately is working with more brick and mortar, kind of more, let's say, real world or offline businesses, kind of trying to figure out how they're trying to figure out how to shift their business into a new realm in order to regain, I guess, what they feel like they've lost, or to kind of maintain momentum. But it's also, I think they're kind of seeing the writing on the wall and seeing that, businesses are moving more virtual. I think people are opening their minds to learning more virtual and seeking out more virtual information. And so people that maybe thought that it wasn't the best way to interact with teams or interact with clients or interact with prospects, I think are kind of changing their tune a little bit. So we've been dealing with some more brick and mortar, more offline businesses trying to navigate and build those online environments for them. So it's been pretty interesting to watch the translation of content, translation of expertise, and translation of just knowledge from what predominantly would never even look at an online course to what it might look like now. So it's not just traditional e-learning. It's I don't know. We kind of have to be you have to be a little bit inventive, I guess, in how you transition that. But yeah.
Well, Jason, I'm going to bring it over to you for a second. it seems like everybody is doing remote learning. The kids in school, they're not in school. They're actually at home doing their online schooling or remote learning. Different schedules. Sometimes it's a hybrid. Sometimes it's full-on remote learning. But it seems like these days everybody is taking online courses. So how is that? Has it changed our expectations? Are new people coming into the market that never thought about learning this way before? What doors has it opened, or maybe some that have closed?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's mostly open doors in terms of, COVID and quarantine. That certainly shined a huge spotlight on online learning. A lot of people have been thrust into that. I mean, COVID has precipitated change and disrupted every possible industry. And so with so many people working online and interacting online, it's definitely brought a lot of opportunity. I think it's brought online courses even more into the mainstream. I mean, already the last 5 years, we see a huge explosion in the number of tools that are available for online courses, and there's a reason for that. It's a very large industry and continuing to expand, whether we're talking about an individual who's creating a course, organizations creating internal training for their, for their employees and people in the organization, whatever the case may be. So I'd say it's opened a lot of doors.
Billy, I want to bring this to you now because you tend to work with some bigger companies that are not just doing an online course, but essentially almost creating a school format as an extension of their business model. What's happening at that sort of enterprise approach to online learning?
Yeah, I think it's a natural evolution of this industry. It used to be that online courses were just kind of a side thing, something that you would do more for passive income, and a lot of people were doing it just really while as they were doing their full-time job. But now you're seeing this evolution where these are becoming legitimate companies, and the companies that I work with are not calling themselves online courses or online course companies. They're calling themselves online education companies, and they are scaling and they are building their teams and partnering up with people who can support their growth. So it's really cool to see where it's going, and there's just a lot of opportunity there. And it goes back to what these two other guys said. It's about the disruption that's happening right now, and disruption always creates a lot of opportunity.
So, Jake, you brought up the sort of, I'm going to call them bricks and mortar or Main Street businesses. Billy, you're working with a medium to enterprise level. Obviously, there are recognizable differences. We're used to talking about these different levels or sizes of business, not just number of headcount of employees, but sort of the business models behind it. What else is different, or is there anything different between the two sort of higher level size of the company? What are you guys seeing? And Jake, I'll bring it back to you first.
With some of my other businesses, I work with some pretty large companies, and I have not worked in this realm with companies at that level. So it's what I'm seeing are typically small to medium-sized businesses that, there still might be service-based, but we have to figure out a way to, to kind of hybrid some of their outreach and hybrid some of their services. And case in point, obviously an easy one to even pinpoint would be some of the fitness organizations we've worked with that, in order to stick within kind of county mandates, they are absolutely handcuffed. I mean, from the size, from their square footage alone is pretty much now dictating, everything about their business, just because they can't have that many people in there. So how do we actually hybrid that? And I think that it's been pretty surprising, because it actually allows us to provide a greater service than what they're providing before, while allowing them to actually still grow and maintain growth, and stick within guidelines and everything, and actually be more profitable in the same time. And so I think a lot of the clients we've worked with in that regard, it's been a real big eye opener. And some of them are like, man, I don't know why I didn't even try doing this before in some way, shape, or form. But I don't know. So I mean, maybe obviously Billy and Jason might be able to speak to some larger companies in the e-education, e-learning space, but for medium to small size service businesses, it's been pretty epic in how it's shifting the business and the way they look at it. So,
yeah, I imagine, Jake, when you brought up the fitness industry, that those folks are really being pushed by some of the bigger players like Peloton, or I think it's called Mirror, some of these companies that are really trying to own that virtual training space as a media company, as a content company. sharing that information. I want to bring up a comment on the screen because Erica joined us, and thank you, Erica. I appreciate it. If there are others out there that if you have a question you want to ask our panelists, I'll certainly be watching for those coming in. And if you're new to the Expert Needs to Know show, well, tell us. We'd love to follow up. We'd love to get to know you. Make sure, by the way, that you join us for our speed networking right after the expert panel. I'll share that link in the comments, but we're going to jump from this platform where you're seeing this over to a platform called Blitzer. And it's pretty cool. We'll talk about that as we start to wrap up the show today. But Erica said, I hadn't thought about the companies using online courses inside the company as a way to train their staff. Billy, how much of because I know you have had a lot of experience and background marketing of courses. Are you seeing that sort of intra approach as well as what they're trying to do externally to build the school aspect of their programs?
I know that exists. To be honest, I'm not too much involved in that type of a business. I do have a colleague, and actually he was a client at one point, who does that for a living and trains companies and helps them create training programs for their companies. And he used to go in and do it in person, which obviously is not as easy these days. So I know that he has been providing a lot of training material on how companies can do that and turn it into maybe someone coming in, a trainer coming in with a team and helping out to doing it through online courses. So it just goes to show you how many opportunities there are for online courses, both internal and external.
Jason, I know you've been working with coaches, consultants, service-based businesses. Is this often their first experience with an online course when you're sort of guiding them into that creation process, or are they trying to take an existing program to a higher level?
I'd say it's a combination of both, but the two things tend to bring people towards creating an online course. One is that they've totally maxed out when it comes to their one-on-one capacity, right? And so whatever they're doing, consulting or coaching or as a trainer, they now adapt that process into something more virtual that they can then, and kind of to this conversation about big organizations, I've seen, this is a little bit of a side, but I think it's relevant. And that is that what I've seen is, as soon as COVID hit at least in the United States, and things really started locking down mid-March, learning and development budgets just like disappeared, right? And all the workshops, I had clients who they go into organizations and they teach and train, and all of those gigs disappeared because nobody was in meeting together. Now you get a few months later and everyone's, settled into this remote working and figuring it out, and there's Zoom, but there's Zoom fatigue, and they're running into all the challenges of communications and things like that. It's working virtually. And so now I see a lot of that learning and development, those departments going back out looking for help and helping their teams through innovation, helping their teams with better communication virtually and all that, to overcome all of these things. So I just wanted to point that out, as I think there's a big opportunity there. And so that's another thing that sometimes people come to me for, is that the second thing is that their means of delivering their goods, their value, their products, their offers to people have just like disappeared or are no longer possible, whether by quarantine, usually by quarantine, or just other shifts that are happening in their industry. And so now they're looking, they've gone through all of this trouble becoming an expert in their field. They're very good at what they do. They have a process for delivering results. They know their audience well. They can sell to their audience well. It's just a matter of adapting that to the new medium now in order to either expand their capacity to reach and help people and make money, or to replace something that they were doing before with a new channel now.
I want to stay with you for a moment, Jason, just to bring up as we transition into a new question. But when you think about this from a strategic perspective, what are your clients? What should they be thinking about? What are you guiding them through in the process? And can you give us a couple big points? And we'll do a roundtable on this, because I know you each have a different perspective on this. But let's do strategy, and then we'll do tools after that.
Yeah, sure. So the absolute number one strategic thing that you need to be thinking about when you're going to be creating an online course or considering creating an online course is, what is the unmet need that it's going to fulfill? What's the outcome? Who is it serving, and how is it going to serve them? And being very, very specific about that. It's one thing to say, hey, I want to make a course about digital photography for digital photographers. But it's another thing to understand that crowd so well to realize, oh, all these professional digital photographers that are freelancers are maxing out on their time, working 12-hour weeks. They'd like to work less, make more money, but they don't know how. So I'm going to write I'm going to create a course on how to have more efficient workflows so that you can deliver faster and every hour of your time is worth more. So that's a very specific outcome and need. And the only way you can really identify those things is by really being in touch with the audience that you want to serve with your online course. So the first strategic thing is to get out into your intended audience and talk to people and really hear, like, what are they running into? What are the challenges? What are the holes and what's being done? And to kind of go back to what we originally said in this whole thing, disruption creates opportunity. And the reason why is everyone's needs suddenly shifted. Lots of new needs popped up to the surface. So the first thing I was telling all my clients when they were freaking out about COVID was, go talk to your audience, go talk to your clients, go talk to your email list and see what their needs are now, and then adapt whatever you've been doing to those needs, because that's what's top of mind and that's what they're going to want to buy. And you can easily see the opportunity there if you just go talk to them.
I love that. Have the conversation. So that is the world that I live in as well, but hear what people need and adjust with the market because the times are changing. Jake, I want to bring it over to you. We'll talk about the tool because I know that's part of your background, what you developed with Ashley. But from a strategic level, what are you doing as you're working with some of these businesses to make this transition?
I think it's kind of, we always like to start with the end in mind. With everything we do, we try to reverse engineer everything. And while we think that's true as you're, just like Jason said, thinking about what that gap is that you're going to be filling, what that need you're going to fill is, and then reverse engineering that. But also keeping in mind is what kind of business do you really want to end up with? And I think that a lot, online courses, they become so popular. I think that people originally come to us thinking that this is going to change everything for their business. And while a well-positioned one, a well-created one, a well-marketed one can absolutely change everything for your business, if it's not strategic, and it's not strategic in the way you build it and strategic in the way you design it, it can actually add a lot of complexity and disruption to, I guess, the business you're trying to build. So we always really take a lot of time to figure out, okay, where do you really want this to end up? How do you want your day to end up? How do you want your business to look like? And what does that course have to look like in order to support that mission? What is that course like? How does it have to be designed? What's the fulfillment mechanism? What's the, pricing model? How does it need to be broken up? And typically it's not just a large one single course that people think that they have in them. It's more of a compartmentalized, structured kind of approach to walking people down that fulfillment line. I'm huge on fulfillment lines, but walking people down that fulfillment line to actually reach, I guess, the business you want to manage, because it can get out of hand. You can actually end up creating a beast for yourself that doesn't fit within the life you want. So we kind of start with that first. So it's just being more strategic.
Yeah, no sense building something that you're going to hate and want to tear apart later on.
Exactly.
I just want to share because I think it builds on this idea of one, sometimes people are forced to be resourceful, but one of my absolute favorite stories from this weird COVID chapter that we're living in right now was back in April, May. I couldn't tell you the name of the bar, but obviously they were shut down. It was a pub and they were shut down, during the lockdown period in April and May. So they pivoted and ran an online course through Zoom, low tech, no platform. I don't even know if they're still doing this as part of their game plan, but they taught a bartending class for their patrons, their regular patrons. They were able to gather and they had people essentially making and mixing drinks at home as a way to build that brand, stay connected to their folks so that when the doors did open, there were relationships there. Go back to Cheers because that's where people know your name. This conversation was already happening online, which I think allowed them to generate some revenue from this special experience and probably provide some entertainment for folks at home that were feeling a little lonely as well. So I just want to throw that story in there because you don't normally think of a bar or a pub as being the type of business that could be offering some kind of online experience, online course experience, but certainly came to the front for these folks. Billy, I want to shift to you. We can talk about strategy for a second, but I'm really curious to hear, I've been waiting to ask you this question, to talk about the school aspect, the sort of stacking of courses into a school format, because I know that's you are on the cutting edge of this space. I'd love to hear what you're seeing and why people are organizing and what the advantages, disadvantages are of that model.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a good example of this is one of my clients, Tiago Forte, who has a really popular course called Building a Second Brain. And it's a productivity course, but it's more than that. It's about taking all the knowledge that you consume, all the blog posts you read, all the podcasts you listen to, and taking really good notes on those things, and then turning them into creative output. And that might be through writing or a podcast of your own. And what he's found, and I took this course. That's how we came across each other initially, because I started reading his blog post and really enjoyed what he was writing about, and took the course and said, man, this is really amazing stuff. And so, unfortunately, we entered into a working relationship where I've been helping him grow his academy over the past year and a half. And so he's really turned it into more of an academy, more of one of these online education companies, because what you find is that, and Jake and Jason know this, when you solve one problem, it often creates another problem. So you can solve someone's problem when it comes to, say, organizing their files or productivity, which is what he helps with building a second brain. But then it creates this other problem of, okay, well, now what do I do with this knowledge? And so with his academy, he has this foundational level, which is the building a second brain level, which is usually, if you want to picture this, it's usually some kind of a note-taking tool. So Evernote is a very popular home for people's second brain. But then there's the second level on top of that, second layer, if you want to look at it that way, which we call the expression layer. And so for that, he teaches some of that, but there's all, it's a large universe, and he wanted to bring on experts who are really specialists in these different areas of expression. So for example, one of the courses that he's allied himself with is a course called Rite of Passage by someone named David Perel. And so it's Rite of Passage, W-R-I-T-E, very clever name. And so, and the two courses go hand in hand, really. You take Building a Second Brain, and that teaches you how to capture your knowledge, take excellent notes on it, and then combine all these different ideas to come up with new ideas. And then you can express that using David's Rite of Passage course through online publishing. So that's the way that you get it out there to the world. So you see with these online courses and then into these online academies, they can really create this great ecosystem where you're this, and I think this is what Jake was probably getting to with your fulfillment concept, Jake. You really want to look for students customers, but really students for life. Mm-hmm. So you really want to be their guide throughout their journey, because they're not just trying to learn a productivity tool. They are trying to better their life in some way. And if you can help them with that, you already have that trust built in. So yeah, you might as well find a way to provide that solution to them.
So every time you solve one problem, you're seeding the next one. So it just makes sense. Mechanically, by definition, these academies or these schools, it sounds like it's not just a bundle of courses, but the school format, is it implicit in that description that there are multiple instructors, and that this isn't just one instructor that's got a series of different courses that they're offering, but they've created a collection that will build on the fuller picture?
Exactly, yeah. So the model that we're using, and that's working really well, is it's not so much a bunch of really inexpensive courses in a course catalog like you might see on something like udemy.com. This is more of a high-end, a premium experience. And instead of it being a very passive experience, it's a very active experience. So in this model, typically the teaching is done live. So we call it as a marketer, I'm not crazy about this term, but it seems to have stuck. It's called the Cohort Model, where you take people through as a group, as a cohort. And what we found is that when you do that, you get such better results for the students. We have this term that we use called the student experience, which really wasn't even a term when I got started in online courses 10 years ago. I mean, the student experience was you'd download a zip file to your computer and you got a whole bunch of documents and videos to go through. With this, really, it's moved from the content being the center of the online course experience to the community being the center of the online course experience. If you look at someone and talk to someone like David Perel and his course, I don't know what he's charging for his next round, but it's going to be around $5,000 for this course, which is, that would have been a lot of money a couple of years ago, even a year ago for an online course. But because of the premium experience that he provides, and all the support he provides, and bringing in alumni mentors and doing breakout groups and one-on-one onboarding. He has to charge that much to provide that experience. And there are people who are willing to pay that. And you look at the quality of people that he gets in this course. I mean, he has some real movers and shakers in there, VCs, CEOs, thought leaders. And so, and anyone who's joined a program like that, all of us have, I'm sure, been in mastermind type of groups. You really don't join so much for the content. You join for the other people that are in that program. And that's what we're seeing, that trend move towards online courses.
Interesting. It sounds a lot like a group coaching model that is now, well, the group coaching was also delivered virtually in many cases. So how would you distinguish between the two?
There's a lot of overlap. Yeah, there's a whole lot of overlap there. It's looking more like group coaching. There is a stronger curriculum component to it. You certainly have to have that framework to follow, and you have to be a good teacher. And that's a key thing too. And the people I work with, they are adamant about improving their teaching skills. They study instructional design, things like learning objectives. So we're really, you know what it looks like. It looks more like traditional teaching. This cohort model, you could call it a short semester. And when you take a class in the real world, when you take a college course, the teacher doesn't just give you the textbook and say, all right, see you later. At least not right. The good professors don't do that. They teach you the textbook, and the textbook is more of a supplement. And then you have study groups, and you have office hours and things like that. It's the same thing. It's the same model. It's being replicated online. And although it seems expensive, maybe $5,000 for a course, that's pretty cheap compared to a 4-year degree.
Well, I think that is going, the cost of the credit hours, the tuition credit hours, is going to become one data point of reference as people start to have more options. I know, for example, Google, this was one of the news stories that we looked at. Google has come out with their IT certifications. They have a whole series of them, essentially taking the legs out of, if you're a higher education offering, computer science programs, would you rather go directly to Google that's going to give you the skill set and the certification that will, or do you want that 4-year degree that may or may not be applicable so that's a different discussion. I don't want to derail us. I actually want to bring us back because Erica asked a question. She said, so what should we have in place before we launch our first online course? If we're thinking about it, can you sort of walk through those steps? Jason and Jake, I know this is right up your alley. So let's go Jason first and then Jake on this.
Well, the first two things I'd say is kind of something we've already said. I mentioned how important it is to know who the audience is, and then Jake mentioned how important it is to know where it fits in your business model, your vision, and where you want to go. And so the course really needs to sit in like a Venn diagram, where those two things overlap and cross, right? But after that, it's a matter of just knowing that you can get results for that audience. So that's why I love working with coaches and consultants and consulting firms, because I already know that they've done the work to figure out how to get good results for their audience, and now it's just translating it into a new channel. So those are knowing your audience, knowing where you want it to sit in your business model, and then just having confidence that you can deliver good results. If you don't have that third piece, then get out there and do some one-on-one consulting, even free if you need to at first, to kind of hone that process a little more, or launch a pilot as quickly as you can, which is something I do a lot with my clients, is have them launch a pilot to prove out their process, get some success stories, see if the market actually reacts to it. Then you can, polish it and fit it into your business model better than that. But those are the items I'd say are really important to know up front.
Love that iterative model of being able to put out the pilot, see what's working, make the adjustments. Maybe there's a pilot 2 or 3, but you have an opportunity to dial it in as you go. Jake, how about you? What are you advising people as a starting point if this is a completely new experience for them to launch? Jason pretty much kind of nailed it. It's we always start with kind of like, well, what's the big idea? But the big idea, a lot of people, they don't really know where it comes from. And I think it's the ability to kind of a little reflection on what you've actually accomplished. Even if you haven't directly worked with someone and gotten hired and paid to do something that you're teaching, we find that when you're working, especially with a lot of corporate runaways, which is what my wife and I both are, long time ago, but
there's a lot of things that we accomplished over even our corporate careers that translated into what we actually carried into coaching. And so, sometimes you just kind of have to be creative and look back at what your kind of hidden skill sets really are, what you actually were able to accomplish, and that kind of translates into what you're moving forward with as far as your course. But I think ultimately for us, we don't do anything without beta first. So everything has to be validated as fast as possible before we build anything, before we move into any kind of build out. It's just kind of that reverse engineering process. So for us, like you have to want to try. And it sounds very, very simple, but it's kind of like, we can help like design that approach to beta and design that approach to validation and help you kind of pull together those keys that are going to allow you to do that. But if you don't get out and at least just have the willingness to kind of test your market and put yourself out there. And a lot of times that's a big departure to where people are when they come into kind of creating especially their first course. They're not at that mindset. They've been working one-to-one, or they haven't done much at all. So it's kind of like you just have to have the willingness to try and just be kind of relentless in that first approach. So the people that win in our programs are the people that like attack, and that's pretty much it. And they're most fun for us to work with as well. So it's that's my vision.
If you guys know, and I know you guys do, but if our audience out there recognizes the name Reid Hoffman, he is the founder of LinkedIn. He is famous for saying, if you aren't embarrassed by your first pilot, first beta, first version the product that you put out there, then you waited too long. So I think he knows a little bit of something about building in the online space. That's a voice worth listening to. Jake, I want to, actually, for the whole group, I want to challenge all of you now. I want to play devil's advocate from the audience. We've talked a little bit, Billy, you brought up the cohort model, the sort of hybrid model of being more live and hands-on. The retention and the completion rates of online courses are really low. What are people doing to address this issue so that the participants are getting the maximum value? Jason, I saw you nodding your head, so I'm going to jump over to you first.
Well, I mean, I love everything that Billy said earlier about this cohort model. And it's funny, he's like the second person in a week who said they didn't like the word cohort. So I don't know what it is. I use the word all the time. But anyway, I think it's a great model, and it's for that very reason. And I encourage a lot of my clients to go that way, to have more facilitation built in the course. Now, the immediate thought might be, well, but Jason, or whoever, I wanted to have a course that's passive income, right? And we mentioned that a little bit earlier. But one big shift, and this is a good shift that has happened, is that it used to be, online courses simply as a business opportunity. I'm not saying there's not business opportunity there, but it was like 80% marketing and 20% teaching. And so I love what was just being said about, people are caring more about teaching and getting results. And so that does mean kind of both to what Jake was saying too, you got to be willing to do some work, you got to be willing to try, and not just put something out there because, hey, if you're a good marketer, you're going to be able to churn and get an income stream going, right? And I think a lot more people are cognizant of the fact that, well, yeah, I want to make income, but I don't want to just put something out there that's not going to really create good and value in the world. The good news is there's fantastic tools and a lot of methodologies you can use to make your course more facilitated like that, to give the kind of input and camaraderie and the community aspect, right? All these things that provide that additional support that make the stick rate a lot better, that help people actually reach the end and get the results. And you just got to be willing to build that into the model if you don't want to be one of those just burn and churn type marketers out there. So that's a big shift I'm seeing in the industry, and it's a good one. It's a welcome one.
Can you guys share some examples of someone who's doing this really well, or examples that you've seen of people integrating some of these steps to make sure people are progressing through? Because I know we have courseware and sort of check off completion rates, but you guys know in this virtual space, someone can be reading their mobile phone right now. That I'm talking about you on, like out there, you've got your mobile phone. You're not paying attention to the experts here. Billy, what are you seeing in the what can people do to really take their courses to this next level?
Yeah, so one thing is, the first thing you need to do is you need to measure success. So one really good strategy you can use is to give an onboarding survey. So when people come on board, measure where they're starting out, ask them questions, ask questions around your topic. You might identify a few different areas, maybe 3 to 5 different skills that they need to have, and see where they are, and then take them through the program and see at the end where they wind up. So you got to have some kind of barometer, something to measure. It's the old management consulting saying. I think it was Peter Drucker said, "What gets measured gets what gets measured gets managed," is the saying. And then you can find ways to improve those numbers. And really, this does. I know this might seem like work, but this really does translate into more revenue, because the best marketing material you can have is results. And the better results that you get your students, the better testimonials you're going to get, the better case studies you're going to get, the more recommendations and referrals you're going to get. So it really is a positive feedback loop. And just to give you something that you can do, one thing you can do is to form study groups. So we're seeing this be really, really successful. So the students, they want to interact. They want to get to know each other. And this is a great thing as an instructor. You don't necessarily need to even be there. You just need to facilitate it. And I've been in courses myself where I did this, and we met once a week for 60 minutes. We had our group of, it was about 5 people. And the only thing the instructor did was facilitate it. They formed the groups, they matched people up. They provided the calendar, the schedule, and then we took it from there. And we even had a WhatsApp group going so we could text each other on the side. And that was really critical to implementing the material that was in the course, which is normally where you see the ball dropped and where you see the fall off. It's one thing to provide the content, it's another to get the content acted upon. And study groups are a great way to get it acted upon.
I love that suggestion. So whether we see study groups or maybe breakout rooms, if there's a lot of talk about that right now with Zoom, being able to break into the smaller groups for discussion. Jake, is there an ideal size? Is this online model like infinitely scalable for the size of the course, as long as you have some of these structures to not lose someone along the way? No man left behind.
Yeah. I mean, that honestly, we have about 8 different sayings for no man left behind, but yeah. So I mean, just like Billy was saying, like we like to kind of design, when we're helping people design what we call success points, and it's just like instead of actually looking at where you are at the beginning and looking where you are at the end, we have multiple throughout, and it's just kind of this constant ratchet of momentum, ratchet of excitement. It's a way to actually, we kind of feel like the best way to actually get overall results is to get fast results. And so, if someone comes to you with an issue, if you have a 12-week course and you say, well, at the end of the 12 weeks, you'll have it fixed. Well, I have an issue now. So what can I do to start you're really kind of not only walking you towards that goal, but letting you know that you're actually making progress towards that goal with small wins. So we try to bake in these success points, but you have to be able to measure it, just like you said. So it's those feedback loops, and then how you use those in order to constantly change and adapt the course. So those success points get easier for every single group going through and as it progresses. Another way that we actually see is a good way of doing this is that, again, we like to chunk it down. So instead of saying like, hey, listen, I want to teach someone A through Z, well, A through C might be foundational. And so if you're teaching something for the first time to these people, to someone, and kind of catching them up, A to C can take a lot of energy, can take a lot of time. It can take a lot of mental space and capacity to get them to the point where the real change happens, which could be like D through Z, right? So we like to break those up and actually say, A through C could be a separate course, instead of, and kind of create our best students, like kind of, design our best students and everything in a separate course where it could be managed and fulfilled a lot faster on its own. By the time we get to the main, components, the main content, we're not doing catch up and we're not reteaching stuff. Everyone there is just kind of flying. So it's I don't want to say that's the only way to do it, but it also is actually, it can be more profitable that way to kind of break it up. I feel like a lot of people leave a lot of money on the table by doing like big things. But again, it's all about making sure they complete these steps to get the small wins in order to get the large win. And, just like you were saying before, it's for us, it's implementation over content, right? I mean, information is plentiful, But if you're not able to take it, customize it, and actually win with it in your business, then or life or whatever you're trying to achieve, then it's really just pointless. So
yeah, what's the point? I love that idea of unbundling the courses, creating modules or little pieces, because we already know from the long tail, this is a driver of, this is the new business model online. Like there's going to be demand that people want to zero in because it's a buyer's world out there. There's more information ever before, and people are going to zero in. Yes, I want this piece. I may not want the full course, but if I can go in and answer this burning question that I have right now, that is going to be compelling.
Well,
and of course, you can always offer the bundles together.
Yeah, and part of the reason why we started really looking at that hard is because a lot of people are saying, well, they're not ready for the course yet. They're not ready for the course. They're not ideal. And I get like really honing in on that niche, but it's kind of like, okay, so what do they need to do? Well, they need to go off and learn something. It's like, well, if you let someone else teach them that, they're probably not going to, they might not come back to you. So why not control that front end, education process to get them to the point where you're ready to really kind of dig in with them. So, I mean, it just seemed like a natural thing that I was kind of seeing people missing. It's just like, I don't really, why are you letting them go? So, it's just kind of, how do we control the entire line? So
it's really interesting. So I come from the marketing world, as you guys know, or we all do in some shape or form, but I tend to see those things on the marketing pieces, like, the product launch formula, for example, teach these different pieces to get ready to actually leverage the course that's being sold on the other end. But what I think I'm hearing you say is you can also create some of these chunked down pieces and sell them individually as part of the business model. Really interesting. So we're going to stay with Jake for a second, because I've got a softball question I'm going to put up right in front of him in a moment. Let him take a big swing at this one. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone, make sure you join us. We're going to be networking right after this live stream. So I will make sure, actually, let me do that right now. We will get the link for networking. We'll put this in the comments. It's over at Blitzer. That's the platform that we're using. And it actually matches you up with people. So you come over, you'll actually get a chance maybe to meet some of the guest panelists today, the experts who are on the panel with us, or maybe some of the experts in our audience. So very much encourage you to come join us, try out the networking aspect, because this is a two-part show. We do the expert show to get some information out there and then have a discussion afterwards. And also, if you haven't checked it out already, make sure you check out bookofexperts.com. You can actually click over there and see really smart folks like Jake, Billy, and Jason, to find them on Book of Experts. Other folks, who are the people that are on that deep bench of experts that you can call upon when you need someone who is a subject matter expert. So with that said, Jake, I'm going to bring this back to you. Let's talk tools. Do you happen to know any good tools in the online course creation space? I'm just wondering if you might have something top of mind.
Nah, nothing comes to mind. No. No, so I think what you're referring to, Tobin, is what we call the course creator dashboard. And by online tool, I mean that it's really kind of a dynamic Google-based tool that we built, actually built for myself. And as you know, I love kind of dabbling and building things, and that's what I do at night when I should be sleeping. So it was kind of a necessity, because, typically everything I always saw out there was, you sign on to like a course creation. And typically at this level, we're dealing with, first-time course creators or long-time coaches building their first courses. And, typically what you see out there is just like download this 35-page or 40-page, workbook and write out all this stuff and then put, Post-its on a board, and it just was so jumbled, and I can't think like that. So I wanted to get everything put into more of a dynamic set. So I started creating in sections and then strung it all together, what we call the Course Creator Dashboard. And it's really just a tool that we use for ourselves, and then started using it with our clients, and they love it. But as you kind of walk through the initial process of just coming up with your idea and outlining it and setting it up, and then kind of entering that into this tool, it starts to dynamically fill in everything on the backside. And then after about, going through what would I say, a couple lessons through our process, you have this thing pretty much filled out. And in there, it tracks all your deadlines, it tracks your timelines, it tells you everything. But the most important thing, what I love about it and why I really created it, is because I have a problem working on things I shouldn't be working on. Okay. So what this does is that I can look at this at night and say, and it basically tells me exactly tomorrow, this needs to get done. This needs to get done. This needs to get done. This might look like it needs to get done, but it doesn't. And it tracks everything, and it gives you red and green, and it tells you exactly what to do. So you can go into tomorrow and just say, here, if I get these 4 things done, I am good. And as long as I maintain that schedule, I'm gonna launch at the time I want to launch. And so it's just kind of a really nice tool. People have loved it, and yeah, I mean it's easy to use, and it's pretty powerful, I think so.
Jason, I want to bring it over to you, because one of the things I appreciate about your approach is I've heard you talk before about you can kind of do this in the lowest tech, like just use the stuff that you've already got access to. How are you structuring that? And can you talk a little bit about the tools as well in this tech stack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is the launch of a pilot, and I encourage my clients in launching a pilot to keep it as low risk, low cost, low investment as possible. Jake alluded to this earlier when he said, we don't create a bunch of stuff until we actually sell a beta and know that that people want it, right? That's going to fly. So, I've launched betas, have an idea for a course, and within a few weeks have it to the market. And I simply, again, going back to what I said earlier, I know who the course is for. I know the outcome that people want because I've done the research. And then I have a process, I just outline enough of a process so I can go to some people and say, hey, does this look like it'll solve what you need? And I get a handful of people to sign up for it. And then I've charged as much $3,000 for a course that was basically like 8 weeks, weekly call on Zoom. In a lot of ways, it's this cohort model. And essentially that's exactly what it is. Store the recordings and a bunch of, I love making tools like worksheets and templates and scripts and things like that for my students. All of that just gets stored week to week on Google Drive. And I just share that Drive folder with anybody who's in the pilot. And then, email. So we're talking very inexpensive, whatever the cost, I guess, is of an unlimited Zoom, thing in order to get a pilot going. So when somebody's got an idea, I sound, get it to the market as soon as you possibly can. Don't worry about all the tools and polish. After that, then I'm like, okay, yeah, go check out Teachable's great. Member Vault is great. There's a lot of great tools out there depending on what you need to integrate with and what your needs are. But there you go. That's the tech stack for a pilot, at least for me. Just really simple.
It sounds like the minimum viable tool set,
Exactly.
Email, Google Apps, and Zoom, or some kind of video conferencing level. Billy, how about you? I'd love to hear, what are you seeing on the tech stack? We get an awful lot of questions from folks about trying to figure out, what kind of tech should they be thinking about. I'd also be curious to hear your perspective, because of your take on the schools, the academy approach, about some of the big learning platforms like a Udemy, Creative Live. There's a bunch of them out there versus owning your own, domain.
Yeah, they have their pros and cons. So Udemy is great. I mean, if you're just getting started out and you don't really know if you want to go all in on doing an online course, and if you don't have an audience, then something like a Udemy or a Skillshare or a Creative Live, it's an excellent way to test your idea, get it out there, and get some revenue coming in. And there are instructors doing very, very well on those platforms financially. The drawback is they are in control. So they're paying you a percentage, and they often discount the courses, which upsets a lot of the instructors because the instructors don't have a lot of say over it. And the biggest drawback in my mind to building on someone else's platform is that you do not get the customer list. So you don't get the email list of the customers, the students who buy your course, which is a very, very valuable asset, as any business owner will tell you, because you can keep that. It's not like, it's similar to building, I'm a big advocate for email marketing. And one of the reasons why is if you build your audience on something like a YouTube or a Facebook or a Twitter, and you don't pull them off of there, you could get banned, they could pull your account, you could get slapped, and then your whole business could just almost disappear overnight. So I'm a fan of those social media platforms, but you really do have to move them onto an email list, in my opinion, to retain that full control. And I see a similar thing with these online course platforms. They can be great, but if you want a long-term viable business, I really think that you have to own it and control it.
Interesting. So we are actually coming up on the top of the hour. So we're going to be networking in a few minutes. Before we launch into the panel picks of the week, it's one of the most fun parts of actually doing the guest panels, because we always get a chance to hear interesting books, apps, like what are people loving? And I usually am scribbling in the background, making notes, because I always hear about these great ideas from what people are using and loving themselves. But before we do that, I'll give the panel a moment to get ready for that part. I just want to say, for you guys out there in the audience, if you're enjoying this expert guest panel today, one of the best things you can do is go find Jake, go find Billy, go find Jason online. You can go to their websites. You see the URLs on the screen right now. You can find them on LinkedIn, on the different social media platforms, find them on Book of Experts. Leave a review, leave a recommendation, start a conversation, rate them if they, go visit their podcast. If you want to show up in the world of someone who's making a positive impact on you, one of the best things you can do is take a few minutes and show them that you appreciate the work. And by the way, if you like what we're doing here, we'd love for you to rate and review Book of Experts as well. The podcast or our live streams, we'd love to hear from you, because we're in this to build real relationships with experts who are making a difference in the world. With that said, let's go to, we heard from Billy last. Let's do Jason, panel pick of the week.
So panel pick of the, what is this, a tool that I'm
I think I caught you off guard with this one, Jason.
Right.
So this is something that you are loving, an app, a book. We don't have to limit it that way, but something that you can share with the audience. I'm going to give you a brief reprieve, because I'll actually go first to give you an example on this one. So the share that the pick of the week I'm going to share with you guys is StreamYard, which is the platform that we're using right now to create the expert show. And the reason I'm sharing this, we've been on this for months now, but I get so many questions. People want to say, well, so what platform are you using? I like how you use the intro video. I like how you're switching screens between the speakers. This seems pretty good. You might also not know we're actually multi-streaming right now. We're on 7 different platforms, from Facebook to LinkedIn to YouTube to Periscope and Twitter. We're in all those places live at one time. I'm a big fan of StreamYard. There are other platforms out there that do it, but not platforms that I've been able to run the show, which means produce the show, push all the buttons and make things work, and be the host at the same time. So for that reason, I'm a big fan of StreamYard. All right, now you're up, Jason.
All right, cool. Well, something that's coming immediately to mind to me is Activecampaign.com. I actually just moved over to Activecampaign for a number of reasons, and I've been really happy with it so far. So that's, for those who don't know, that's an email marketing management system. So you can build your email list through that, but it's much more than that too. It's a database where you can tag people, you can keep custom information on people, you can integrate it with all of your course platforms, you can set up automated sequences, so all of that good stuff. So I'm really quite happy with it over the solution I was with before that, and so I highly recommend it. Though, if you're really budget conscious, ConvertKit.com is the other one I recommend. You can get a free account with them to get started. So, but otherwise, I'm a big fan right now of Activecampaign.
Folks, remember how I introduced Jason when we started? Like, if you are a longtime email marketing list building guru and you know how to do this right, that might be a recommendation you want to listen to. Billy, how about you? How about your pick of the week?
Yeah, my pick is going to be Notion. So Notion is a very popular productivity tool, really taking off right now. And the way I use it, or what it is and why I like it, it's part of this no code movement you see with software, where it really provides you a workspace. That's how I look at it. So I use it for writing. I use it for mapping out marketing campaigns, writing longer form content. And it gives you a lot of flexibility. So you have this workspace, kind of like a Google Docs, but you can do a whole lot more with it. You can drop in a relational database. You can drop in a calendar really easily. You can embed a video really easily, add links really easily. And you can link it to different parts of your workspace as well. So I've just found that it's really unleashed a lot more creativity in my life because I'm not as limited by the tool that I'm working in as I used to be with some of these other things like a Google Doc.
Interesting. So we've had Roam come up, ROAM, come up on prior panels, and Notion now we're getting added as well. Jake, you're gonna back clean up for us to wrap up here as we're approaching the top of the hour. Your panel pick of the week.
Well, as far as kind of like, I'm going to go with some sales page and funnel builders and stuff like that. And I'll name two quick ones. Kartra we use for everything. We switched over to Kartra about a year ago. It's shortly after they kind of launched. It's really kind of like filled the void of all in one for us. So it's a fantastic program. It's extremely powerful. But typically what I'm really liking right now and what we are using with most of our clients, at least for beta, is Google Docs for sales pages. And it might sound really crazy and really like elementary, but there's a big problem right now with load times on sending out sales pages. And a Google Doc, a simple, even well-designed Google Doc with all of your links and your information just sent like that. I mean, really, if you know your audience, you know your offer, and you want to test offers fast, it loads in a second. You can change it on the fly, and it can link out to any of your payment portals, PayPal, anything like that. And it's just really fast, and everyone can do it. So it's really a way for people that are afraid of technology to be able to go and actually kind of create a sales page and send it out there. So I will
second that.
Yeah. All right, folks. So you've heard it here. There's no more excuses. All right. You don't need the tech for the website. You don't need the tech for the online course. You can do this with what you already have at your fingertips. You can get it done. You can actually collect money and then build the course. There's no more excuses. We've taken those all off the table. Listen, guys, I appreciate you so much taking the time here for our live streaming part of the Expert Show. The link is in the comments. So make sure you join us over on Blitzer. Blitzer.com, if you can look that way, but it is the experts, Book of Experts meetup, and we're going to gather with the panel and with some of our experts in the audience and get a chance to meet folks. So I'll see you there shortly.